Okay, well, welcome everyone. I am so glad to be here tonight to be able to talk about one of my passions, which is being out in nature. Um, Thank you in particular for being here tonight because it is so beautiful outside. It is a gorgeous day, and we're starting to recognize that it is springtime. And so I think we're all itching to be outside. Um, but just happy to talk to you tonight about, we're going to be talking about some of the science behind why, we enjoy being in nature. We're going to do an experiential forest bathing. And we're just going to talk and share, and it'll be a nice evening here. So let me get started. I'm wondering if there's anything else that I should say about myself. I actually have an undergrad degree in environmental science, so I've worked in the environment for a lot of environmental organizations over the years, probably like 19 years in different roles. And I just kind of had like a life event where, that happens and you decide, well, are things going the way I want them to go, or do I want to do something different? So that's where, I just kind of had this pull towards counseling. And so I went back to school, got my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And now what I'm trying to do is bring things full circle and do some walk and talk therapy or nature informed therapy. So be able to take clients outside. There's a lot of research showing that that can be beneficial for people, especially who maybe don't want to sit and look at each other eye to eye, face to face, or it can really help with self-regulation, or just help people be more comfortable when they're out in nature. So feel free to pass my information along if you know of anyone who might be interested in that. So let's just get started with tonight. I'm going to start with a question here. Um, so, what if I were to tell you that in the United States we have a healthcare system that has over 400 locations around the country? It serves over 330 million people each year, and it offers resources that are proven to positively impact every dimension of your health and well-being. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? Like, sign me up. And it has an annual cost of less than $100, and most of the time it's free. Now, I'm not going to give you the answer. You probably already know what the answer is, but I'll give you the answer at the end of the presentation. So you have until then to Google it. I want to start off with a little bit of terminology. I sometimes use the word ecotherapy, which is kind of an umbrella term for everything that I'm talking about tonight. And I think of that as really anything that interacts with nature, anything that helps you grow as a person, that helps your health, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, emotional or spiritual well-being. And so there's all kinds of different ecotherapy, not just the walk and talk therapy that I was talking about earlier. There's adventure or wilderness therapy, and that's where people actually take like a deep dive into the wilderness where there's, bears and scary stuff, but also really exciting and fun things. And so, there might be groups that go out, well, adventure therapy. This is an example of the picture here is on the St. Louis River in Minnesota. And if you haven't done the whitewater rafting there, I highly recommend it. This is a picture from when I went a couple summers ago. It was a lot of fun. There's animal assisted therapy. Equine therapy is starting to gain traction. And so that's actually spending time with horses. And it's a really quiet, you're not riding the horses. The horses are able to help you self-regulate. There's something about like their breath or their heartbeat will match ours and can help slow it down and help us to self-regulate. I find it very fascinating. There's things like therapeutic horticulture, care farming, that might be You hear about children who are doing farming during school, growing their own food. And then they're also being able to harvest that food and eat that food and learn about connecting with gardening. There's also nature arts and crafts. You can do outdoor type activities, yoga, tai chi. Um, then there's, you might have heard of forest bathing, or I like to call that more of forest therapy walks. Forest bathing, people say like they get scared, like, oh my gosh, is that involved like a bathtub? And do I have to soak in it? And am I wearing my bathing suit? Or but really what it is, it started in Japan and they call it Shinrin-yoku. And that literally means bathing in the forest atmosphere. And so you're really, it's a slow paced, mindful type activity where you're using all of your senses to be able to connect with nature. And so that's where I got some training last year to be a certified forest therapy guide. The biophilia effect. So this translates to literally to love of life. And so it can also mean the human drive to connect with nature and other living things. We humans have been around for what, 300,000 years or something like that. And we have evolved with nature. And we tend to forget about that we actually are nature. We think of ourselves as separate, and really we're not. Our nervous system evolved in nature. We were cooperating with nature. We relied on nature. It was give and take. So that's kind of what biophilia is about. It's kind of remembering that our relationship with nature is encoded in our DNA. It's designed who we are as human beings. And because of that, we're softwired to protect the earth. It may not feel like that all the time, but I'm hopeful, and I think there's more of us that do want to protect the earth. A couple of theories that I think are really interesting and kind of flow throughout this presentation. One is called as tension restoration theory. And Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, husband-wife team, back in the 80s, came up with this theory that they call, well, attention restoration has to do with mental fatigue. So, you know, life is kind of, I don't want to say hard, but busy. There's just so much distraction and so much going on in our phones and our computers and email now. I just remember in the 70s when we just go out and play kick the bucket, it was a simpler life back then. There's just so much coming at us right now. And it can be really challenging for our brains at times to focus on something specifically. So that's what the mental fatigue is. If you think about, when you're in a meeting at work and then afterwards you maybe come out of it and you're maybe a little tired, you just kind of notice that. It's because you were focusing on the discussion. You were using those parts of your brain to really focus on, following the conversation and brainstorming ideas or whatever it was that you were doing in that meeting. But we only have a limited capacity. Sometimes I come home from work and it's just like, I'm tapped out. I don't have any energy left. So with attention restoration theory, we can kind of refill our bucket of that mental fatigue and get us back to baseline by being in nature. It can help us improve our focus. It can help improve our concentration, reduce some mental fatigue through something called soft fascination. Fascination is like looking at a flower. It doesn't take as much brain capacity as doing a math problem, say, you know. Um, or scrolling through social media. There's actually research showing that, we think that scrolling through social media is relaxing. It actually does create mental fatigue for us because we are, trying to focus on what's going on. Um, and there's stress reduction theory, and this was posited by Roger Ulrich. And this relates more to the biophilia hypothesis that I talked about earlier. And that's that natural environments promote recovery from stress, while in urban environments inhibit recovery. And we know this, we go out into nature and we're maybe stressed or ruminating, and we go for a walk, and maybe after 10, 20 minutes, we're I'm like, I'm not ruminating anymore. Well, and oh my gosh, there's an eagle's nest. And, you feel more relaxed, and your parasympathetic nervous system relaxes. That's our rest and digest system. And then there's research to show it reduces our blood pressure, slows our heart rate, relaxes our muscles. Um, Then there's something called nature deficit disorder. And this actually isn't a term that's in the DSM-5, but I still like it anyway. I kind of think it should be in there, But this was coined by Richard Louv, and he wrote a book, and maybe some of you are familiar with this, Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. And in that book, he talks about how kind of there's this epidemic of inactivity, an epidemic of obesity, and epidemic of not getting outside. And so, this is taxing our health. I look at the picture here, and it's a person, who's maybe surfing the internet, has her credit card, and, is more focused and busy on doing that. But that's not relaxing. I mean, that's kind of stress inducing, or it can be. Let's see, what else do I want to say? So some of the potential causes of nature deficit disorder, obviously, too much time indoors. I saw a statistic lately that we spend 90% of our time either in a building or in a car. I mean, really? 90%. That's a huge number. And that's due to increased use of technology, less access maybe to green space, especially if you don't have somewhere to go that's walking distance, which a lot of people don't. And then just some declining green space in cities as well. So if we take a look at this image, maybe ask yourself, what are some words to use to describe this image? You can just think to yourself internally, or maybe even, how do you feel looking at this image? It's pretty busy. There's a lot going on here. I almost can hear the traffic. Can anyone else hear the traffic in their head? I can maybe smell some not so good smells. Um, some people might find this exciting, though, looking at an image like this. It's like, oh, it's really colorful. Or maybe it reminds them of a trip, to New York City or something like that. So, there's no right or wrong. But I think for most people, when they look at this, it might be kind of overwhelming or stressful, even, not being able to focus on anything specific. There's also research out there showing that we don't like, our brains and our eyes don't like straight lines, whereas nature is, more soft. So back to that directed attention, it takes a lot of brain power to focus on this image versus, what about this image? Oh, that's not so bad. That's that soft fascination. Wow, this is so much easier to focus on. It's really interesting. I can kind of hear the babbling brook, feel the coolness of it if I were standing in it. Maybe I hear the birds chirping. It's just less taxing on our brain to look at nature and to be in nature. So, I could spend so much time. I could do a presentation on each of these benefits of nature and being outdoors. Go ahead and look through the list. I'm not going to go through each of them individually, but the research has shown that um, and maybe you even notice this when you go out into nature too. It's like your shoulders relax a little bit more, your breathing slows down, and consequently, your heart rate goes down. And these are all good things. I talked earlier about the ruminating. You know, we do a little bit of thinking in nature, but maybe after 10 or 20 minutes, you start finding things to focus on that look interesting, or listening to things that are more interesting. Um, there's definitely been a lot of research, and just because I'm in mental health, I will say that it does affect mood in a positive way. So there has been research that the more time you spend in nature, it reduces anxiety and can reduce some of those depressive symptoms. So a lot of clinicians now are prescribing go out into nature. A doctor might write a prescription saying you need to go for a walk, you need to go camping, you need to garden. Um, you need to do whatever floats your boat, but get outside. So I found this interesting statistic. And really, we're going to watch the whole thing because I love watching this and I can watch the whole thing. I love how it's just grabbing for the last. I need every last little bit. Come on, get that last one. Find it. Find it. There we go. I would love to see that out in nature. Wouldn't that be fun to come across that? So,
What did it reduce?
oh, a lot of things. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, your breathing slows down. Um, it reduces anxiety, stress. Oh, you want me to go back? I can go back and we can watch. Oop. Yeah, heart rate and respiration changes. It even lessens pain that's on there, and that has to do with that ruminating. You're focused less on the pain and you're more interested in what's going on around you. Lowers the systolic blood pressure, increases that mental acuity, that ability to focus and to concentrate, that directed attention. Um, they've even shown that it mitigates the impact of dementia, including Alzheimer's. So that's another great reason to spend time in nature. And of course, it's great for exercise. We won't watch the beaver again, but anyway. Unless I get a vote, yeah, we want to watch it again. So I just want to talk about how nature relates to our senses really quick, because there is a lot of interesting research around that as well. I'm going to take a drink real quick. Um, um, so of course, I mean, I think that's how we visually we look at nature all the time when we're outside. Um, there was an interesting study, and this was Ulrich again who did this study, where there were people in a hospital who had gallbladder surgery, and they're in different rooms, and he didn't assign what room they were in. It was just random. Um, but what he looked at was after their surgery, some interesting things happen. Some people had a room that had a view with modest nature, like they could see the clouds, they could see maybe a tree or two or the grass. Other people had something really boring, like a brick wall outside their window. And what he found was the people who had the view of nature out their window, they required less pain medication. They were kinder to the staff, to the nurses, and they got out of the hospital a day earlier. So isn't that interesting? Um, so I'm going to talk more about how much nature we need because I get that question a lot. But just know that even 45-second glimpses out of a window is beneficial. So it doesn't have to be, a deep dive. It's just during your day, if you're feeling exhausted, just take a glimpse, look out for a minute. That counts. It doesn't have to be a whole lot. You can also just have plants in your house as well, or on like we were admiring the picture of the mountains on the screen here. So like if I am going to have to focus on my computer, my I'll have what is that called? The desktop picture that rotates different nature pictures. So I just kind of think of it as like micro doses that I get connecting visually. Connecting with sound. Now, obviously, the research has shown that people do not like the sound of busy cities compared to the sound of birds. I found some really interesting research, though. So, my office is right next to 35E and West 7th Street. And literally, it's my office, a wall, and the highway. So, I can hear the highway in the background all day long. Now, to my dismay, reading this research, I found out that even having background noise, like for the most part, I can tune it out during the day. Even having that background noise raises your cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress response. We do not want that. So, noise can really affect us. Some of our favorite types of sound are wind, water, and birds. I mean, that makes the wind kind of caught me off guard. It was like, really? I don't like it, especially in the winter, cold. That's the last thing I want. But the sound of wind, water, I mean, who doesn't love like a water fountain or listening to the stream or the ocean? That sounds beautiful. And birds, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, of course. Springtime, we're listening to the birds. That's how we know spring is here. Birds are singing. Um, and so they think that one of the reasons we are attracted to bird sounds is because, again, back in Neanderthal days, if we hear bird song, we know all is well. When we don't hear bird song, it's like, oh, tornado, something catastrophic is about to happen. Where did all the birds go? So that's why we're so attracted to bird songs and why Merlin bird ID is so popular. We can also connect with smell. And actually, in Japan, they've done a lot of research on this. So in Japan, they have a lot of the cypress forests, and cypress kind of smells like pine mixed with menthol. It's actually a really good smell. I have it in my office. And so these cypress forests, they give off this chemical called terpenes. And that is like when a tree is injured or being attacked by a fungus or an insect, it will emit these terpenes. Now, when we're walking in a cypress forest and we breathe in these terpenes, it has a magical effect on our body. It activates these killer T cells in our bodies, and the killer T cells are what go around and search for things like cancer cells and fight viruses. So that's really interesting. I mean, they're really kind of ahead of the curve in Japan, so much so that outside of their designated forests, they have a blood pressure band. And so you take your blood pressure and then you write it down, and then you go for your walk, and then you come back out and you take your blood pressure and then you write it down again. So they can kind of keep track of that. It makes sense. It's state funded healthcare, so they have incentive to keep their population healthy and to do the research. There's also the senses and our feeling when we're out in nature. Um, so that might be things like, we were talking about the wind or air pressure differences, or, like if you're underwater, as you dive deeper. Um, it might be sense of weight, gravity, or balance. Like, what does it feel like when you're walking through a forest, trying to walk over stones and, change your balance, move your body, hopefully not fall down. Temperature changes, on a hot day when you go for a walk in the woods and you can notably feel the temperature go down a degree or two. The sense of seasons changing. We have to insulate ourselves, and thinking about how nature insulates itself during different seasons. How different things feel on the skin. Um, we might go and pick up a flower and we're more looking at it visually versus, how does that maybe feel against our skin? Uh, or if we're going to touch the rough wood, what does that feel like? Our space or proximity, our distance between ourselves and a tree, maybe, or between ourselves and the river versus being in the river or in the stream. And our sense of motion. That might be, watching a branch move in the wind or watching a bird fly by. So there's more than just the, sight, touch, smell, taste. It's also just that kind of proximity feeling. And where are you in that space of nature? Something to pay attention to. I think a lot of times what we do is we're more focused on getting from point A to B. And we're like looking down so that we don't trip on that rock, versus look up, look around. So we're just going to dip our toes into some forest bathing tonight. So all of you folks at home, hopefully you were able to grab something like a rock or a pine cone, or even if you have a plant that you want to go and grab or sit by, that'll work. I invite everybody here, whatever looks interesting on your table, go ahead and grab one of those items, and you'll need that for this exercise. Or maybe you brought something of your own. I thought someone brought maybe a shell. So let's just start off with just kind of getting in the present moment. Let's just take 3 deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you want, you can close your eyes or maybe just have a soft gaze in front of you. Take another deep breath. If you can slow down your out breath, that helps us to relax, and take one last deep breath. And so let's start off with, with our eyes closed, and with this object, just explore it with your fingers. Is it smooth? Is it rough? Is it bumpy? Is it soft? Does it have a temperature? Does it feel warm or cool, dry, damp, sticky? Maybe you want to try feeling it in your palm of your hand or even the back of your hand or on a different part of your body. What does it feel like on your face? How about if you tap it or shake it or rub it? Does it make a sound? What sound does it make interacting with other objects if you maybe tap it on something? If you tap it on your skin or on the table, does it make a sound? Can you change that sound? Alter it? Does it have a scent? Bring it up to your nose. Does it have a strong scent? Faint? Earthy? Maybe it doesn't smell like anything? Does the smell change at all if you rub it or break it or alter it in some way? Now go ahead and open your eyes. And what colors, patterns, or shapes do you notice? Are there any details that maybe look interesting or that you can only see up close or far away? Does the object change appearance in different light? Does it reflect light? How about, does this object remind you of anything from your past? What do you think this object thinks of you exploring it? And lastly, is there anything you'd like to say to this object, either in your mind or out loud? Maybe even thanking it for this opportunity to connect, to observe, feel. And so if you'd like, if you had your eyes closed, if you want to go ahead and open them. Hopefully you found this relaxing. It feels a little different, doesn't it? You know, just picking up an object and really spending some time with it. I think we don't do that that often, but it can be very beneficial. So That's kind of like what we do in forest bathing, is we have these different prompts, and that is just maybe one of hundreds or thousands of different prompts to just help you slow down, connect to nature, be present, be in the moment. How am I doing with time?
You are good. You have about 20 minutes before I give you the 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. So I just like this cartoon that I came across. If you're familiar with Calvin and Hobbes, they're two cartoon characters. They've been around for a long time. So it's this little boy, Calvin, and his stuffed tiger, Hobbes, and they go on adventures together. And Calvin says, "Look at the stars. The universe just goes out forever and ever." And Hobbes says, "It kind of makes you wonder why man considers himself such a big screaming deal." Right? And I think with, Artemis 2 having its adventure and being able to see these pictures and just imagine being out there in space, it just, if even temporarily just expanded our minds of like, wow, there's so much out there. And to see the picture of the beautiful Earth just reminds us that we're all in this together, all of us sharing this big, beautiful planet. So don't think of yourself as such a big screaming deal, because you're not. Um, so I like to talk about the power of awe really quickly, because there is a lot of research too showing that there are benefits to feeling awe. And I think of awe as something that blows your mind. It's something you really weren't expecting, and you're like, wow. And it's maybe hard for you to figure out like what's going on. I've never seen this before. This is amazing, or I've never experienced this before. And so Keltner describes it as the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends our current understanding of the world. Um, it can inspire feelings of humility and more outward perspective. And it actually, like the power of awe, can bring us together too. So last summer, and this isn't a very good example, but I like it anyway. So last summer, I was driving from up north. I was on Highway 35, and all day it had been kind of raining for 10 minutes, and then it's sunny for 10 minutes, and then it rains for 10 minutes, and then it's sunny for 10. You know what I'm talking about. So driving down the highway, and all of a sudden, a double rainbow appears. And everybody's looking at it, because we all slow down from 75 miles per hour to 60, because everyone's like, oh my God. What? So it was just, I could just feel, even being in the traffic, we were all looking at this double rainbow, and it was there for a half an hour. It was there for a really long time. So that's what I'm talking about. Or maybe you're at the Grand Canyon and you're just like, wow, this is amazing. I can't wrap my brain around this. Or, this picture that I took is from the Narrows at Zion National Park. And man, if you get a chance to do that, that will definitely blow your mind. Um, so we need these moments of awe, but they don't have to be, big things. They can be little things too. You can go for an awe walk and, break it down to A is having that attention and that awareness. So it might be taking out those earbuds, maybe going a little bit slower. Maybe if you see a garden, stop and take a look. Wait, observe something. And then just remember to breathe and exhale, and as you're, viewing this beautiful thing. Uh, so an example is this picture that I took at Lebanon Hills Regional Park. I was, just walking through the park, and I just happened to hear all this buzzing. I'm like, what's that buzzing? Oh, what's going on? And I just look over, and there was just a sea of these purple flowers and just bees all over the flowers. And there just happened to be one that was taking a nap. And I was able to get so close to it. And it was so cool. And I was just standing there looking at it as it was napping. And I didn't want to bother it or wake it up, because it needs its beauty rest. And so that for me was a moment of awe. I've never experienced anything like that. It can be helpful even to think of going out with like beginner's mind, or how little kids can even be fascinated by dirt or a rock. They found it just, wow, exhilarating. This is fantastic. Just go out and be curious and seek out experiences that give you goosebumps. Oscar Wilde had this really good definition of nature. Nature is a place where birds fly around uncooked. Yeah.
All one thing reminds me of, I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and just the process of walking our dog around the block. I mean, I don't like taking my kids with me if I'm in a rush, right? But they will stop and look at every leaf or caterpillar or, I mean, it just reminds me that my body used to know how to do this.
Yes, yes. That's such a great point. So thanks for sharing that. So for people at home, she was talking about how she goes on walks with her children and they stop, maybe like a leaf or a bug, and how we used to do that. I mean, we all remember being a kid and being curious about nature. So thank you. That's the perfect example of try to channel a younger you, the 10-year-old or 5-year-old former you when you go for a walk. So whenever I give this presentation, they hear, well, how much time do we need? Well, we don't really know. I don't have an answer for you, but these are some just suggestions. So the 25-3 rule, if you can do 20 minutes a day in a park, maybe it's just walking outside in your garden, walking around your neighborhood, that can be beneficial. 5 hours a week in nature has even more of an impact, and 3 days a month in kind of a deeper dive of wilderness. But I know that that's not really uh, you know, not everybody can do that. So I just say microdose throughout the day. Every little bit counts. Even if it's you're feeling tired at work, just go stand at the window and look out the window. Walk around the block really quick, do a lap. Look at your plant. I've got plants in my office. I'll just look at them. Oh, yeah, so nice. Um, It's also important, time in nature versus connection to nature. It's one thing to be walking with, listening to a podcast or talking to a friend. There's nothing wrong with that. You just don't get those benefits that we talked about earlier of the lower blood pressure and, mood stabilization and things like that. So you really do have to do like the awe walk in order to reap the benefits. But like I said earlier, there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. We don't really know how much time in nature we need. There's just no one size fits all. Just get as much as you can. That's what I say. Um, so someone did develop the nature pyramid, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, but like I said, just if you can just get a daily dose at least of, pop outside. Like when I pulled up here, the sky, there was just something about the clouds. They were all just kind of puffy and separated. And I just, looked at them for even just like 10 seconds. That counts. Or the other day, I was getting into my car and I noticed that the tree parked right in front of my car had little buds coming out. So I had to go and look at all the little buds, and oh, I'm just welcome back. We've missed you. Little things like that count. They say, I can't even read this writing, it's so small, so I'm not going to go through this whole chart, but different ways to connect with nature. There's just hundreds of ways, but these are just some suggestions here. The picture here is from Franconia Sculpture Park in Franconia, Minnesota. If you haven't been there, it's amazing. It only takes about 45 minutes from the Twin Cities, but they have, I don't know how many acres of land, and sculptors from all over the world come and create sculptures on the land, and then they have mowed paths that you can walk around to go see each of the sculptures, and then they have native habitat plantings. It's just really beautiful. People don't consider dark nature, going outside at night and observing the stars, looking at the moon, making art with items from nature, reading books, watching documentaries. I'm sure there's probably a ton of ideas that aren't even on this list. I get a lot of people who say, I don't like to explore nature by myself. How can I do that with others? I highly recommend the Minnesota Rovers Outdoors Club. It's free. It's a nonprofit organization that's run by volunteers, and the volunteers, the members just plan events like walking, biking, camping, kayaking, canoeing, um, all kinds of stuff. And you get an email, and then you just sign up and you go out and do these activities with others. If you want to do things like camping or kayaking, they have a locker that stores all kinds of things that you could use, like backpacks and kayaks and things like that. Um, Minnesota State Parks has a lot of great educational programs. I always do those when I'm camping, and you can find those on the websites. Wilderness Inquiry Minnesota is another really great one. So if you want to go on an adventure, like I'd like to camp, but I don't have the equipment, or I'd like to go kayaking, but I don't have the equipment, check into them. It's fantastic. They're also a nonprofit, and they're here in Minnesota. So last summer, I went kayaking in the Apostle Islands in the caves, and they have all the equipment and the camping gear and everything. You just pay and show up. They provide all the food. They cook all the food for you. It was an amazing experience. And it was glamping too. For those of you who are like, I don't want to lay on the ground. It was glamping on pads with beds, and so it was fine. Three Rivers Park District is another great organization that has outdoor programming. And I'm sure, like I said, there's probably others on this that I don't have on this list. So back to our original question. Does anyone know what this healthcare system is? I just want to yell it out.
National Park, yeah.
Yep, U.S. National Park Service. That's the best healthcare out there. So I just wanted to end with this quote. I love this quote, and a lot of times I like cry when I read this quote, so hopefully I won't. Creation is all things and us. It is us in relationship with all things, the ones we see and the ones we do not, the whirling galaxies and the wild suns, the black holes and the microorganisms, the trees and the stars, the fish and the whales, the molten lava and the towering snow-capped mountains, the children we give birth to, and their children, and theirs, and theirs, and theirs. And of course, I love this picture of this humpback whale. So beautiful, majestic creature. And actually, I could do a whole nother presentation on like the benefits of water, but that's a whole nother presentation. So don't think you just have to go into the woods. You don't. It can be water. It can be plants that you have in your house or where you work. That counts too. So I'm just going to end with saying thank you and go outside. Go outside frequently, often, and enjoy yourself. Anyone have any questions?
Where was Sculpture Park?
It was Franconia Sculpture Garden in Franconia. It's just north of Marina and Synchro. It's south of Taylor's Falls. That's a better description. Sculpture Garden. And they've got a website, and they have a really nice facility with bathrooms. That's always important, I think, if you're going to go out walking. Yeah, it's would it be considered Washington County, or is it north of, it's probably north of Washington County even. It's by Taylor's Falls. Go for a hike at Franconia and then drive to Taylor's Falls, which is just 15 minutes away, and have ice cream and a burger. And do more hiking there. Yeah.
Being outdoors, like intentional, we're gonna go camping as a family, or we're gonna go to this park, or did that come like when you did your studies?
Oh, that's a great question. So the question was whether I grew up going out into nature and camping and all of that. And yes, the answer would be it was very influential. My grade school sixth grade teacher regularly took us outside. We learned math outside. We learned science outside. We learned literature outside. We learned, art outside. He always incorporated the outdoors with whatever it was we were learning. And there is a lot of research about that as well, because, they're starting to cut activities now and kids are bouncing off the walls. I think it's in the Netherlands or, one of those fancy countries where they have the smartest kids because every 45 minutes they have recess and let the kids outside. You think about children who have ADHD, they need to release some of that energy, and the best place to do that is outdoors. So yeah, that was a really big influence for me. I also grew up in the boonies. Wasn't a whole lot to do other than to go explore the woods and collect tadpoles. I grew up on a lake, which was, I didn't realize how fantastic I had it until I didn't anymore. And so it was just constantly exploring, and I was just surrounded by nature. And then that's when I decided to major in environmental science. That was more like, I don't want to major in anything else here. So just, I want to be outdoors for my career. So I'll just and I never was outdoors. But anyway, I took one of those assessments where they said in college, when you don't know what you want to be. And the results for me were teacher, nurse, social worker, or therapist. And I said, no, absolutely not. You got to be kidding me. So, but it caught up with me and bit me in the butt and, became a therapist. And now I'm trying to combine these two compassions together. But yeah, being outside definitely influenced my career path and just really what makes me happy, where I go to self-regulate. I mean, my friends think I'm crazy because I camp by myself, but I love it. I can't imagine camping with someone else. It would be irritating to me. So it's just like, I just want my space and my peace, and I just want to be with nature and make mandalas and go for hikes and breathe in the terpenes and, all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know can you read it to me?
So what being outdoors, for example, does a hike in the snow or rain still help?
Yes, actually it does. So, University of Chicago, I think it was, did research about that where they sent people out either into the city or into like a nature park or something like that. And before they sent them out, they gave them like a stress test of like, repeat back these numbers that I give you in opposite order. And so that's pretty easy when you're just doing 3 numbers, but by the time you get to like 8 numbers, that's stressful trying to remember and repeat them backwards. So they stress them out and then they send them out on the walks and then they have them come back and they do the test over again. And then a week later, they had everybody come back. And if you went on the nature walk, then the next week you go on the city walk. So they did that in warm weather, and everybody's like, yeah, sign me up. I can't believe you're paying me to go outside in this warm weather. This is great. But then they had them all come back in the wintertime and do it again when it was like, 20 degrees out or, even less than that. And what they found was that it was still beneficial. So you don't have to enjoy it in order for it to be beneficial, is what they found. And really, being in nature is not everyone's jam. There are some people who are just like, no, I'm good. Yeah. So
Reminder that once you are a senior citizen, you get a free, I think it's free, or else it's a one-time lifetime pass to national parks.
it's lifetime. Yeah.
But
Yep.
it's free.
It's free.
Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
So, $70.
It was,
Is it?
it was free, there was a window.
But,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Yeah.
It's still reasonable.
it's reasonable.
Yeah, that's not bad. Is that $70 for a lifetime then or a year? Okay. Yeah.
It was free for a while, but no, it may be a one-time fee, but then it's lifetime.
I'm curious about your line that eyes don't like straight lines.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that. So what we really are attracted to, so it goes back to kind of that directed attention. It's and the soft fascination. We like, what is it? We like fractal type shapes, and fractal shapes are like what repeat patterns in nature. So if you think of like a snowflake and you put it under a microscope and you zoom in on it, and as it gets smaller, it's the same shape over and over again. Or it's like a tree has a trunk and then it branches and then branches even more. And then it branches into leaves, and the leaves even maybe have the veins that represent the branch. And then when you zoom in on it, even the cells branch. So that's what fractal patterns are in nature, and you see them all over the place. Versus you don't see that in man-made, like the wall is straight, ceiling is straight, think lines. It's somehow it's just more taxing to our brain in a way, versus the fractal images are more relaxing. And they've got research to back that up too. It would take me too long to explain how they did the experiment, but it's interesting.
About being outdoors and mitigating the impact of dementia, including Alzheimer's. Talk a little bit more about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, that I don't know a whole lot about either. But I think it's just beneficial in general, moving around, moving your body, having something to do, something to care for, gives kind of meaning, gives purpose. There's still a curiosity there. You're still, getting your hands in the dirt. And I think it's just because you're still using your brain and learning new things and exploring, and that part of it is healthy. It's kind of in that same bucket as eat healthy, exercise, get sleep, go out into nature. It'll reduce your chances of, getting Alzheimer's. But they have shown that if like places with memory care, if they have plants around, or if they have, taking people outside can be very beneficial. They've even shown that people with Alzheimer's do respond well to gardening and to planting and things like that. But I don't know a whole lot about that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something that they're learning a lot more about.
Yes. Yeah, this is definitely, I think, especially since COVID, this is really starting to gain people's interest, but, we can't package it in a pill. So it's hard to find money to pay for the research if you can't pack it in a pill and sell it. So that's where a lot of other countries are way ahead of the curve, especially European countries, Japan, Korea. And again, they're state-funded countries, so they have a stake in it in keeping people healthy, and that's why they do the research. So we're kind of tagging along here in the United States, but they know a lot more than we do. Yeah.
Do you know if the terpenes are available in aromatherapy?
They are, and I forgot to bring them. So she asked if the terpenes from the cypress trees are available in aromatherapy. So like in Japan, they put these terpenes in everything, like their soap and their toothpaste. But I would take it with a grain of salt. There's still a lot of research about that. It might be that you actually have to be in the cypress forest in order to be beneficial versus getting it from aromatherapy. I suppose it depends on the quality of it, or, I mean, terpenes really are an oil anyway, but it wouldn't hurt,
If it was organic terpenes.
yeah, I mean, I have it in a cotton ball in my office, because I'm like, it couldn't hurt. At least it's relaxing to me. I find it beneficial that way. So I'm not sure like how much you have to ingest in order for it to have a huge benefit. Like anything, you still want to go to the doctor and get your normal treatment. It's not going to replace, Western medicine, but they've done some research to just show, hey, this is really interesting. We need to explore this more. Yes.
The 1,000 hours outside movement.
Yes. So the 1,000 hours, and it's been a while since so correct me if I got it wrong, or do you want to, what's your understanding?
And people, I think mostly parents with young children, but trying to every year spend 1,000 hours outside. And I will say my family tried it a couple years ago because they have trackers online where you can mark off the hours. I think we only got 3 months through before we stopped tracking, but for us, it was a good way to like challenge ourselves to spend more time outside.
Right.
It's got really into like tracking the amount of time. So I was just thinking about that when you were with the slide about like how much time do you need? It's probably not 1,000 hours, but there are groups of people out there who are trying that, and I think, yeah, I don't know, it can be a fun challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for the folks online, she was talking about, what's it called again? 1,000 hours. Okay, she's going to put the link in the notes chat field here, but yeah, I don't really understand it any more than how you described it, but yeah, it is just kind of incentive to get the family out, and yeah, I think it can be beneficial, just like how we track our steps, and can be motivation definitely to keep going, see your progress, celebrate once you've hit your 1,000 hours. Yeah, it's a really great website.
So you had mentioned that, for some people, being outside just isn't their jam,
Mm-hmm.
which, it's really hard for me to even imagine, but, so I'm curious, in the work that you do. So as you were talking, I was thinking about my adolescent niece who has severe anxiety, and she does not like to go outside at all. So
Mm-hmm.
as you were talking, I thought, oh, I wonder if you have to want to do this for therapy, or if it could be force fed.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, like, would you ever suggest, like, really, like, even though you don't want to do it, you should try this? Or is it something where people come to you and are just curious about how it might be an adjunct to help them?
Yeah, I think, well, most of my clients have never heard of it, so I'm just starting to introduce them to it as an option. So I always approach it as, is this something you might want to do? Would you be curious about that? I don't force them to do it or anything. It's completely up to them. What it sounds like with your niece is maybe kind of exposure therapy, is just, in a controlled way, taking baby steps to get her outside and working with the anxiety that way. That's, to me, seems a little bit different than taking people out, and so taking people outside for a therapy session. I can do most interventions outside. I don't have to be inside. I can still do cognitive behavioral or acceptance and commitment therapy outside. But the difference is again, maybe back to that self-regulation, or it might be uncomfortable for someone. They might feel like they're in a box in the office, or maybe it helps expand their view, or we can use metaphors with nature to help describe what it is that they're going through. Maybe how they maybe feel stuck, but we might talk about how, oh, the changing of the seasons or something, how that changes, or how the leaves have to let go, or the trees have to let go of their leaves every year, and just those kind of changes, and kind of weaving that into the therapy. that we do. But, and also it could just be sitting at a bench. It could be sitting at a picnic table. It's not like we're hiking. I go at the pace of my client. They get to choose where they want to go, how long they want to go. Maybe they want to have a session inside. So, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
You said the difference between this and exposure therapy, that connection really.
yeah, that would be more exposure therapy. I'm thinking with your niece. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons why people might not like the outside. I mean, it's buggy, it's hot, it's humid, it's cold, there's the wind, and, or maybe there's some trauma related to that. So, am I going to be bit by a dog if I go? Am I going to get stung by a bee? Those kind of things. And those are all considerations too when, as a clinician, you take people out. As well as like privacy issues. And what if we run into someone we know or that or something like that? Or what if you, God forbid, trip and fall and skin your knee, those kind of things. Any other questions? These were all great questions. Thank you. I never get this many questions. I'm so excited to get this many questions. And I'm no expert by all means either. This is just, I'm so fascinated with this that I've just read a lot of books and, watch YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just happy to share everything that I've discovered because I just think it's so exciting. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it and hope I inspire you. I'm sure you already get outside, but hope it inspires you to do some all walks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to the people on YouTube. Thanks, everybody in person and on Zoom for joining us. And please do fill out that feedback form. It's in the chat if you are on Zoom. And if you can't find it in the chat, scroll up a little bit and it'll be there. And in person, you have it on paper. And looking forward to hopefully seeing you all on May 7th for the Stories of Hope breakfast at Mount Olivet. We do not have a collaborative education meeting in May because we decided we are doing a lot for Stories of Hope, and maybe we would take care of our mental health as a team by not planning a collaborative education event in June. I don't have the date in front of me, but in June, myself and my spouse, Craig Simonson, will be talking about neurodiversity, which fits with his new job. I'm excited, excited for that conversation and to share more. So June the 9th. Okay, so hope to see you back here that day. That and the for folks who are in the room, there is a flyer for an event that the Bethlehem and St. Joan of Arc mental health team, a talk that they have coming up. So I don't know any more details about that, but okay. Jana, yes, we can talk more about that in a moment. But to those of you online, thanks so much for being here. Have a good night. Can you close it, Heidi? Oh, yes, okay, well, I'll come back here and look this one then.
So, yeah, it's a lot of fun.